Salutations, ladies and gentlemen, the Streaming Enderman here, back again with another video, and in today's video I have a very special knife for you, and this is the Helle Viking. Now, the Helle Viking is an extraordinarily unique knife, and I say this because of the heaps of history behind its design. Now, personally, nothing I can do in this video will do this knife justice. The amount of design and craftsmanship put into this knife is so outstanding. And again, the history behind it is one of the most extensive you will find in a knife still being made today. But I will be doing a brief overview of this knife, and hopefully, in some form, I can do it a bit of justice, even if you'll never truly experience this knife until you hold one in your hand. So, without further ado, let's take a look at this knife. So the Helle Viking comes in a very nice handmade leather sheath, and it's a very simple friction sheath with these beautiful designs throughout. The belt loop in the traditional Scandinavian style just says made in Norway. This is Norwegian leather, not imported. And you can see how the stitching pattern went, or sorry, the loop created. You can see it goes through around again, loops through this little part here, and this is the end of the loop. But this makes for a very effective belt loop. It's certainly not as strong or sturdy as some modern belt loops, but this is the traditional style you would have seen. So, again, very simple, but gets the job done. The sheath there is no safety, there is no mechanism to hold the knife in, it's just a simple friction sheath. Unlike the Nying, I have here another Viking, well, not necessarily Viking, but another Norwegian classic that's been around for a very long time. The design is incredibly old, but you can see here, this sheath has a little pin or a little notch, and you pop this through this little cutout here, and that's what holds the knife in. Very simple little mechanism here on this sheath, but this is much simpler. This is a friction sheath. You simply pull the knife out. And here we have it. Beautifully simplistic, immensely useful, and carried by its history. The Helle Viking. So, this knife is an anomaly for Helle. I say this because it uses a steel that Helle almost never uses, and the only other knife I believe that they still make that uses this steel is the Saga Siglar, which is a slightly smaller variant of the Viking. Now, this steel is what truly makes this so unique. It is oily, because I did recently oil it, as to prevent corrosion and keep the steel in its best condition. But this is triple-laminated carbon steel. Now, Helle, for those who have purchased Helle knives and used them, you will know they make triple-laminated stainless steel. For example, the Nying here, the knife with the sheath I just showed you, this is a triple-laminated stainless steel blade. So I'm no expert in anything metallurgy. I am absolutely ignorant to most processes, but I will say I am very aware that triple-laminated steel, in this particular case, is a hard carbon steel core with 2 layers surrounding it of a softer steel alloy, like a stainless steel. And this means you have the best of both worlds. You get the toughness and ease of sharpening of carbon steel, and you have the better corrosion resistance and durability of stainless. And thus you have triple laminated steel, 3 layers. And from the little I've seen, I very much enjoy this, and it works very well. I also have it on my little Helle folder here, the Kletten. One thing that it is known for, unfortunately, is that it scratches quite easily. In fact, you can see this single scratch, this mark going throughout the entire blade here. That was from one use. So yes, this is very easy to scratch. That is one of its downsides. But triple laminated stainless steel is similar to this. However, the difference is this has no chromium in it, and it is a carbon steel. This is not rust resistant. In fact, it is very much rust vulnerable. As with most carbon steels, it will corrode and rust if you don't take care of it. However, this particular model with the triple laminated carbon steel, I believe, again, do not quote me on this, is even more susceptible to rust. And I believe that's due to the fact that there are 3 different layers of carbon steel here. And I believe the center layer, as with the laminated steel, is practically just pure carbon, from what I am aware. And I believe that means that the knife as a whole, while it does have 2 other layers of more of a traditional carbon steel, maybe something along the lines of 1095, the core is incredibly vulnerable to rust. And because of that, it's not going to be very good at resisting rust. So even now, you can see this has hardly been used, and I have been keeping it oiled pretty frequently. Now, while that is probably patina, and again, patinas form on this knife as they would with any carbon steel, you can see that while that's patina, that is most likely rust. And again, it's just surface rust. Surface rust is not a huge problem. In fact, it can be removed quite easily with baking soda and other such tools. However, it will become a problem if it starts to engulf your knife blade. So if you see a bit of surface rust, don't worry, it's not a big deal. Just remove it, oil it, and it'll be fine. But if you let it get out of hand until it covers the whole blade, your performance will drastically start to decrease. So keep an eye on that. If you have carbon steel knives, leave them in oil when you're not using them, and when you are, just keep an eye on them. Make sure they don't start rusting. But in the meantime, more about the knife itself. This has the traditional Scandi grind that all Helles have. A very nice, almost hollow grind of sorts, but it isn't called a hollow grind, of course. It's called the Scandi grind. And this is a very nice blade contrast that I really, really like. It is a dark finish, and I believe these are all completely unique. I believe this is straight from the heat treat, and there is a certain process they do with the steel to give it this rough texturing on the top part of the blade. And you will see this in Japanese hand-forged kitchen knives with the, say, Santokus or the Gyuto. You have those, I forget the exact name, but those grooves in the knife that feel textured. And those actually serve a purpose, fun fact, because when you're cutting vegetables with the knife, it actually prevents stuff from sticking to the blades, meaning your blade will remain clean, and, say, your slices of tomatoes won't actually stick to the blade. That's just a little fun fact there. And it also looks quite unique, and I know a lot of people are into aesthetics for their blades, myself included. So I really like this. It has a very nice dark, aged look. It definitely looks like something that's fresh from the forge. Could have just been smelted out somewhere, prepared to be taken aboard a vessel to go sailing and pillaging. Again, this is a traditional Viking design, and while they may have not had triple laminated carbon steel, this would be very close to what a real Viking belt knife would look like. Carbon steel, they wouldn't have had chromium. Birch wood, because that was the local and most common, shall I say, tree in Norway. And it's common all over the world, but particularly in Scandinavian countries, you'll see a lot of birch. This is one of the nicest birches, and this is called Masur Birch, also known as curly birch. It has a very nice grain pattern in it, and no two pieces are the same. You can see absolutely lovely pattern. I really enjoy it. Even comparing to my other two Helles, which also have curly birch, you can just see the contrast in these two pieces alone. This is much lighter, and it has this fiery pattern in it. This also has a flame pattern, but it's not quite the same. But again, the colors are drastically different. And finally, this one has almost no flame patterns at all and is easily the lightest in color. Again, that is also curly birch. So from those three knives alone, you can see the contrast that this wood offers, and I absolutely love it. It always is nice to know you have a completely unique knife, and that is the same with the Viking. Now, I can already hear you. You survivalists, you bushcrafters, the ones who want the most exquisite steels possible, the best contouring, the most comfortable grip of all. And I hear you. You're saying that this is just too basic. It doesn't have a textured handle. It doesn't even have a finger guard, and that makes it unsafe to use. It doesn't have any jimping on the blade. It clearly is missing the modern conveniences that you'd expect in a fixed blade. And as I've said before, first of all, knives like this were never, since the dawn of time, meant to baton. If you used one of these around the campfire back in the Viking Age, they'd hand you an axe, because you aren't supposed to use knives for that kind of task. These are for light whittling, carving, maybe feather sticking, and that's kind of pushing it. But skinning animals, hunting, fishing, they aren't meant to cut blocks of wood. And I shouldn't have to say this, but there are a lot of people that think that that's what a fixed blade knife is for. I have to say, this is not true. An axe is for cutting blocks of wood. If you're in the forest and you had to choose between a knife and an axe to cut down a tree and prepare a fire, an axe would be a far smarter choice, or even a hatchet if you want something small. But yes, little rant out of the way. Don't worry, you don't need to be using this for chopping wood. It's meant for basic tasks like hunting, fishing, carving, whittling, and it excels at these things. The handle, despite not having contouring or having a finger guard, is incredibly comfortable. The way that the wood was shaped, you can see it gets thinner at the front and is thicker at the back. And this makes for a very nice palm filler. And you can wrap your fingers around it very well and get an incredibly solid grip. As you can see, I can hold this very steadily. And again, there is no texturing. There is no fine grind in how the handle is structured. It's just a very simple barrel-shaped piece of wood. And another thing I've said with other Helle knives, all of the Helle knives I've had are outrageously comfortable. The nine, for example, looks ridiculous, but this little groove here, and then the fatter area here fills the palm, and again, it is just so incredibly comfortable. And even down to the cleton. Sure, it's a 3-finger grip, but for a 3-finger grip, it's one of the strongest little knives I own, and that remains true to this day. The Viking is no exception. Full 4-finger grip, even with larger hands. You can see there's still some sticking out, and you can get a very good grip on this. So whether you want to be holding it in the usual hammer grip, I believe, the fencing grip for more precision, or even the reverse grip, I'm not sure why you'd need this. This isn't a fighting knife, but you can do that as well. It works in pretty much any way that you'd wish to be wielding a knife in the woods. And aside from that, why is my mind going blank? Well, the spine. Why did my mind go blank there for a minute? Anyways, the spine of this knife is rather thick, measuring in at about 3 millimeters or so. So this is by all means a strong knife. And with a combination of a very thick edge or thick spine backing up a relatively thin edge that this has been sharpened to, this makes for a strong and very efficient slicer. Granted, it will not work as well for small, thin slicing, say, cutting a piece of salami or picnicking. That would be more along the expertise levels of an Opinel, a very thin, razor-like blade. But for any outdoor activities, a strong spine and a thin edge backed up by said spine makes for an incredibly useful blade. So we've talked about the fact that this knife is comfortable, and it has beautiful curly birch wood. It's made with triple laminated carbon steel with this very nice dark finish. Nice Scandi grind, incredibly sharp tip, razor sharp edge. In fact, if you want a quick demonstration here, you can see that this is actually hair shaving sharp. And for a fixed blade, that says something. That is certainly what you'd want. This is sharp, straight out of the box. You could take this out into the wilderness and you wouldn't need to sharpen it. It is already in using condition. So aside from having a very sharp edge and tip, this very simple drop point blade, Helle logo stamped into this dark finish top part of the blade, the nice Scandi grind, the thick spine, the barrel-shaped handle, the handmade friction sheath. The last thing really there is to say about this knife is that it's held in with a stick tang, and again, this is how knives would have been back in the days of the Vikings. They wouldn't have had full tang, skeletonized construction. They would have had a simple stick tang, and it probably would have been held in by something very similar to this diamond-shaped rivet right here. So you can see that's all that holds it in. It's very, very sturdy. There is no blade play up and down, side to side, or any other direction for that matter. Incredibly secure. This isn't going anywhere. It's a very strong construction, very simple construction, stick tang. Again, just a very balanced knife with a very simple design, and this is truly what you would have seen back in the days being carried by the Vikings. It is a very traditional design that's not only famous in Scandinavia and Norway. This is a design that has been seen all across Europe, Eastern Europe, etc., Russia, Ukraine, Poland. And while I can't claim that this exact design has been in all those places, a very similar, simple, drop point blade, no finger guard, wood handle knife, they've been seen many, many times. All have slight differences, like different carving in the wood, maybe different designs, runic symbols that have cultural backgrounds. Different blades, of course. Some have more of a clip profile. Some have even had sheep foots. Everything is truly up for debate in that sense. But this is still a timeless design, and it's a very functional piece of history. This is a replica, and it was such a good replica, mind you, that it was used in a fundraiser, I believe in the 90s or late 80s. And it was used as a fundraiser, and every knife purchase went towards funding the construction and sailing of a replica Viking longship from Norway all around the world. And it succeeded. And, a little bit of trivia, that longship was called the Saga Siglar. The Saga Siglar is also the name of the slightly scaled down version of the Helle Viking, with a slightly shorter blade and the exact same handle length. And the same steel, of course, with the same sheath. So, little interesting tidbit of history. So the Viking knife, this has been around since the just before the turn of the century, into the 2000s. So this is one of Helle's older models. Not quite as old as the Nying, of course, but it is the oldest historically. Helle, of course, wasn't around back in the days of the Vikings, but I'm sure the ancestry did date back very, very far. However, while this isn't the oldest Helle has made when it comes to production, it's certainly the oldest historically. And I think that for the price, which is actually a very reasonable 160 Canadian where I bought it, you can find it at kentofinglewood.com. They also have some store locations, I believe, all across Canada. I believe there are a couple... Not a couple. I believe there might be one in British Columbia. There may or may not be one in Ontario. And I believe there might be one or two somewhere in Alberta. But if you don't live in Canada or you don't live anywhere near any of the particular storefronts in Canada, that's perfectly fine. You can just find them on their website. And they will ship for free, I believe, all throughout Canada for $60. So if you buy this knife, it's already $160. You'll get free shipping. And while you're there, maybe grab some bottles of blade oil. They work very well at keeping carbon steel safe from rust. But either way, very, 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 very beautiful knife. It has its own charm to it. It may not be fancy, but there's just something about it that just screams user knife. But at the same time, it could be put on a shelf as a historical replica, because it does that just as well. So, thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been of interest to you. I hope I didn't ramble along too much. But, yeah, for those wondering, basic specs, just one more reminder. You can find this at kentofinglewood.com. I believe they also sell it at Knives and Tools UK. I believe that's the name of one of the retailers. I've also heard farrarandtanner.co.uk sells Helle knives. I'm not sure they stock this particular model. I'll have to check. But all I know is you can certainly find this at kentofinglewood.com. Very nice store, wonderful customer service, good shipping prices, and that's if you're not getting your knife sent to you for free. Well, the shipping, that is. But just beautiful knife, triple laminated carbon steel, Scandi grind, name stamp in the actual steel itself, unlike most of Helle's stamps, which are not actually embedded in the steel. So this is a unique difference. Again, love the finish on that. Reminds me of a Japanese kitchen knife. Beautiful barrel-shaped handle with surprisingly nice grip. Very comfortable, very ergonomic. Well-weighted, well-balanced, well put together. Incredible quality, handmade in Norway with the leather sheath. So whether you plan to put yours to use or put it in a display, perhaps you're a LARPer or I guess you could say, cosplayer, and I believe historical reenactor, this could be a great thing for you. Or you're just a collector who enjoys interesting little tidbits of history, or someone who's particularly interested in Viking lore. This will be the perfect knife for you. And if you're looking for something just a little bit smaller, the Saga Siglar is a great choice, with just a slightly smaller size and the same great style and usability. So, thank you very much for watching. This has been the Helle Viking, and this is the Streaming Underman. As always, signing off. Goodbye.